I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Today is Thursday, May 4th, 2023. And boy, we've got a good show for you today. Great friends of mine talking about important events. Our conversations, as always, global in nature, informative, hopefully inspirational as well. I want to begin, however, by inviting you and asking you to support this program, this project, this conversation by becoming a member or subscriber to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. How you do that, go online over to YouTube, find the Insight News channel, and simply subscribe. Not only do I want you to subscribe, I want you to tell everybody you know that we have a good time here every day talking about our view of the world, our sensibility, our opportunity, our possibility, talking about our people as solution makers, not as the problem. And so that's kind of what we do. And we're glad to have the technology to enable this conversation, these relationships that we're building. You may be connecting to us through the Black Press USA YouTube channel. We love our partnership with the National Newspaper Publishers Association, the Black Press of America, and their YouTube channel is called Black Press USA. You could be connecting with us on their Facebook channel, which is Black Press USA on Facebook. But you may be connecting directly with us on the Insight News YouTube channel, on our Twitter, on our Facebook, or on our what's the other one? YouTube, I guess. However you connected, we thank you for being here, and we want you to go to the YouTube channel of Insight News and be a subscriber and tell friends to do it too. Now, also love to know where you're at, where you're watching from. So drop us a note with a question or comment, or just say hello on the comment section on whatever channel you're on. Tell us your name, tell us where you are. We'll shout you out. Thank you so much. Well, we want to begin, as we always do, with what we call Hot Topics. Before I do that, I want to announce that we've got a program that includes our editor for books, W.D. Foster Graham. He's got a special guest, a friend of mine, Sharon Botts Garth. She'll be here for her book. And our colleague and friend, our editor from Bahia, Yoji Senna, is here as well. All in all, it's going to be a great show. Let's go to Hot Topics now. And what we've got are topics that we want to sort of call your attention to. Tell you what is on our mind and see how it relates to you. One topic we get from pbs.org from the NewsHour, and the story says that Florida bill allows Ron DeSantis to run for president while governor. And it goes that Republican Ron DeSantis would not have to resign as Florida governor in order to run for president under a bill given final approval by the GOP-dominated state legislature. The new bill would carve out an exemption to Florida law, requiring anyone seeking office to resign from the one they currently hold after they have qualified as a candidate. So this bill passed the State House 76-34 along party lines, and now goes to DeSantis, who obviously is expected to sign it into law. Democrat Representative Angela Nixon says he needs to resign to run if he wants to run for president, period. The last time I checked, she said, being governor is a full-time job. Running for president takes a lot of work. The bill, which makes a number of other changes to Florida election law, among other things, it would tighten limits and increase fines for third-party voter registration organizations. It would impose more restrictions on mail ballots and shift responsibility for determining if a voter is eligible from the state to the individual. Opponents of the bill say it's another step to suppress votes of minorities and economically disadvantaged people to benefit Republicans who already dominate state government and Florida's federal offices. So what do you think about that? Got a comment, observation? If you support that move, drop us a note in the comment. We'd love to share your thoughts and get your feedback. The next hot topic is about Minnesota here. The headline is that the House is expected to pass paid family and medical leave legislation And it's an article that you can find on the insightnews.com website. It says that in Minnesota, Representative Ruth Richardson, sister, a Black woman who's a DFLer from Mendota Heights, is sponsor of House File 2, which would establish a state-run insurance program to provide Minnesota voters up to 12 weeks of paid family leave and up to an additional 12 weeks of paid medical leave per year. Richardson calls it a boon for the state as it would reduce workforce shortage by making it easier for people to take jobs knowing that they would have the flexibility to take off time for family or medical issues. Opponents say it would be a bane for small employers who wouldn't have enough employees on staff to be able to quickly hire new workers to cover the duties of employees taking paid leave. They also dislike the new taxes that the bill would place on employers and employees. Richardson says our current system design reinforces the notion that only some people are worthy of care. Only some people are worthy of time off to rest or to recover or to take care of their families. This bill, she says, will reject that harmful narrative and begin to build a long overdue and much more inclusive safety net. She goes further to say it's ironic that high-income people working for large corporations who can better manage a financial crisis are more likely to have employer-paid leave plans, while lower income people who may be one paycheck away from financial devastation do not. The Minnesota House is expected to pass the bill later, and if it does, it'll go to the Senate, where it should pass, and the governor should sign it as well. Well, the next and third hot topic today is that May is National Get Caught Reading Month. National Get Caught Reading Month. What a wonderful idea. This article says that May is National Get Caught Reading Month, and there's something special about getting lost in a book. People around you may say you're secluding yourself, but how can you not want to lose yourself in another world or go on a great adventure or get to think through deep thoughts guided by some of the greatest minds and best storytellers? In 1999, it was decided that there needed to be a celebration of reading. The Association of American Publishers, AAP, supported the efforts to dedicate an entire month to being caught with your nose in a book. To be, that's cool. So hide your obsessions no more. National Get Caught Reading Month is your chance to come out of your bookish nook and get caught reading. How can you celebrate National Get Caught Reading Month? It's easy. Take out your favorite book and read on your lunch break. Take some time to read while you're enjoying a great or quiet pre-work breakfast, and keep that book by your side on the bus, or mount your favorite book on the treadmill at the gym. Who knows? You may run into other enthusiastic readers who share your passion, love your favorite authors, and may even direct you to new authors that you will just love. So it's May, time for you to get caught reading. That's so cool. It's so wonderful. And it resonates with me personally this morning. A shout out to my doctors at Health Partners. I went to the post-op visit for my cataract surgery 2 weeks ago, surgery on the right eye yesterday, surgery on the left eye to remove cataracts. And I have just all kinds of wonderful and positive things to say about being able to see, including the power of reading. So while I was waiting in my lobby this morning for my doc to come in, I had a book with me, and this story I just read, Get Caught Reading, means so much to me personally because that's what I like to do. I like to get caught reading. In fact, we used to, when we did this program, I'd have a stack of books lined up behind me of things that I'm currently reading. I'm reading usually 4 or 5 books at a time. I'll read part of this, part of that, part of this, part of that, but I'll keep them always in front of me and give myself a specific amount of time to spend in each publication. And I find it both exciting and exhilarating to take every spare minute I have to have a book around and grab and read a page, a paragraph, read a chapter, or read as much as I can and put it down and find something else to read to balance that as well. So, that's why today's program is so important too. We've got the great W.D. Foster Graham, who's our reader advocate in chief as the books editor for Insight News, to talk about that later on in the program. Get caught reading. That's a wonderful way to get caught. Get caught with a book. Plan to do that. You know, the other thing, I said this, I think yesterday or 2 days ago. Um, wouldn't it be wonderful, Black people, if we got in the habit and established a practice of building personal family libraries? I have a library here. I've got a whole basement full of books, bookshelves, a wall, books. And at the office for Insight News, books, books, books. And I value that I have them. I read as many as I can, but if I can't read them, they're there because I want to create this idea, this picture, this vision of our affinity and connection with knowledge that books represent. And so, wouldn't it be great if we encouraged ourselves to build ownership of books by our people as part of our wealth creation strategy? To value the work of authors like Sharon Botts Garth and W.D. Foster Graham, and place a premium on this creative work that they brought into the world, and purchase these because of the business of buying books, and be intentional about acquiring and knowing the dollar value of our book collection. And we do that with the idea of these are books that we can pass on to our children and our grands, just like you pass a dowry along or jewelry along. We pass along a book collection. And if we pay attention to books, we'll discover that certain titles, because of scarcity or availability or whatever the market reasons are, will appreciate in value. So you end up having a business of understanding and collecting and containing and nurturing knowledge, and the product of knowledge, which is in the form of books in our community. Well, that's me going on and on about what I'm excited about. I'm so glad to be able to do that. Let me begin by bringing my friend and partner from Bahia, uh, Maestri Yoji Senna, joins us from Bahia every week regularly. Yoji, good afternoon, brother. How you doing? Yeah, unmute.
I'm doing very well, thank you. Good
Good to see.
afternoon, everybody.
Good to see you. ¿Cómo va? ¿Qué está pensando?
Muitas coisas acontecendo aqui no Brasil.
Uh,
Como vocês devem estar sabendo, o presidente Bolsonaro vai ver o sol quadrado.
en español, por favor.
Eh, Como dije antes, las cosas acá en Brasil se están poniendo calientes y como ya deben estar sabiendo, el expresidente Bolsonaro está cerca de ver el sol nacer cuadrado.
Okay, all right. Well,
Things
I've
are
got.
hot here in Brazil, and the ex-president Bolsonaro is about to see the sun rise up square.
Well, we're going to go into what that really means. I've got a topic here that comes out of BC News from their World Latin America section, and it says that police have searched the home of former President Jair Bolsonaro in the Brazilian capital, Brasilia, as part of an investigation into his COVID vaccination records. Police suspect the ex-leader's vaccination record was forged so he could gain entry into the U.S. Officers seized the mobile phone of the former president and that of his wife, and arrested some of his close aides as a part of the operation. Mr. Bolsonaro has denied any wrongdoing. Mr. Bolsonaro traveled to Florida at the end of December, just days before his rival, Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, was sworn into office. Since his return to Brazil on 30 March, Bolsonaro has had to appear before the police on 2 occasions to testify in 2 separate investigations. One is examining his alleged role in storming the Brazilian Congress by his supporters in January. He's also being investigated over whether he tried to illegally import and keep millions of dollars worth of jewelry that he and his wife were given by Saudi Arabia in 2019. Talk about those items, Yoji. How big a deal are these 2 investigations?
It is a big deal because the one that particularly burst yesterday, nobody was expecting. He is already charged in 17 other processes. But this one about the falsification of this vaccination card to enter the United States, it was new, wasn't in nobody's radar. And since yesterday, there is more developments because because he tried it once, and then the system is, all of this is showing that one the system here in Brazil is working
Mm.
on flagging irregularities. So
Hmm.
he tried first, and the system flagged. So he tried the second time in a city in the state of Rio de Janeiro called Volta Redonda. It's the city where it's a big industrial pole. They have a siderurgy over there, but it's a highly the politics of Rio de Janeiro is highly corrupted. So, but this particular municipality where he uh, achieved to through his secretary, that is a lieutenant colonel in active duty of the army, was through this connection of these corrupt politicians, and between other things, it is there is some light about the murder of Marielle Franco.
Mm.
So this thing is blowing and it's getting big because one of these involved in this also sequestration of those phones, they got access to one of those people involved saying that he knows who killed Marielle, and that was kind of a bargain to quid pro quo for having those falsified documents. So it was not only Bolsonaro's vaccination card, was his wife, his minor aged daughter, which
Hmm.
is putting him on also in the charges of corruption of minors,
Hmm.
formation of criminal enterprise, and this secretary, this lieutenant colonel of the army in active duty, him, his wife, and daughters. So, and that also to, as you said, to enter the United States.
Hmm.
So, and there is this possibility even that he suffer repercussions from the government of the United States by the way of being denied entry in the future,
Hmm.
or even be charged with a crime.
Legal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do these stories play with the public in general? And I'm asking the question so that you can, as always, give our viewers and listeners a a view, like a sweeping, broad view of the makeup of Brazilian culture. Obviously, I say our particular interest is the presence of the Afro descendants. But Brazil is a place where over 50% of the population self-identifies itself as Afro-Brazilian, and that's a huge presence in any Western society. So, given that, and given the history of racism throughout North and South America, including Brazil, how does this set of public policy uh, problems impact ordinary people, our people, and others in Brazil?
Well, the news of his further entanglement with the law, it produces some kind of happiness in some part of the population. The thing is, how affect us is, for example, this case that he's got linked now to the politicians of Rio de Janeiro, knowing that his political base is Rio de Janeiro and his sons. So they are, and that's something that always been rumored and or known, but so is the militias in Rio. There is organized crime. You have the gangs or the factions are as are they called here, and they have the milicianos, the militias.
Hmm.
Those milicianos are low level army sergeants and then military police of the state, firefighters, all these kind of people, they coalesce into gangs to dominate neighborhoods, and get he goes into the legislative assembly of the state of the Rio. As I say, the state of Rio, the local politics is one of the most corrupt and lethal
Mm.
in Brazil. You know, it is kind of Italy, you know, because there's illegal gambling. As I say, there's the milicianos, and there is the traffickers, and the populations are in the middle of
Mm.
this, and the population is majority black people. One of the actor that yesterday did mention that he does know who killed Marielle. Also, he's a black man. He's a officer of the army too, right? He's a major in the army, not in the police. So it's a hierarchy. Police here is lower than the
Mm.
army. The army are kind of, a superior uh, approach. So this is this black major that also worked for Bolsonaro and was from Rio, who mentioned that he knows who who killed Marielle, and the great possibility is that the death of Marielle, it's related to the sons of Bolsonaro, that they were they are local politicians.
You know, as you are speaking, I'm reminded that a lot of what I know about Brazil comes from watching television and Brazilian movies, and the famous ones. I just can't remember the title right now, but I'm sure you do. The series
City of God.
about the favelas, right? In
Hmm.
the
Oh
in
yeah,
what was the name of that series? A lot of
City of Gods.
City of God.
The original movie, I know, the original movie is City of God, and but I know it's a spin-off of the movie.
Hmm. Good
Yes.
show, good series, exciting,
Yeah.
gripping. Uh, does that show capture accurately portray life in the favelas and life for Black people
It does at that time.
at that time?
So
20 years ago,
it's
20 years ago, right?
yes. So now it's further on. So for example, now here the criminality it is strong. The organized crime. There is two national gangs. That for example, one of them they are planning to kidnap one senator that was the minister of Bolsonaro, minister of justice of Bolsonaro.
Hmm.
So things got worse, I would say.
Mm.
It's similar. Where I live, you gotta be careful how you behave, and
Mm.
once in a while there is some issues,
Mm.
here. So it's a total environment of that you are using the United States, because now they at that time was just in Rio, and that was like the embryo. Now that scenario is
Okay.
even in the small cities. So there are gangs dominating the neighborhood. They go and decree now today all the business got to be closed because the police killed one of us. And if you don't close the business, so in the schools, everything it goes in like that. And if you enter in the wrong street, you got shot. If your windows up, you're gonna have a chance to
Really?
get
Get hit? Okay.
shot.
Mm.
Yeah, it's another. It's
Mm.
for real.
Okay. Okay. Well, another topic we're following in Brazil, that's an article I have from The Guardian, uh, um, that says Brazil's government is taking a stand against major tech companies over a new internet regulation that is shaping up to be one of the world's strongest legislations on social media. That bill is called Bill number 2630, is also known as the fake news law, and it puts the onus on internet companies, search engines, and social messaging services to find and report illegal material instead of um, let's see, leaving it to the courts, and it charges hefty fines for failures to do so. So U.S. companies like Alphabet have been aggressively campaigning against the new bill, with the Google parent company placing an advertisement on its search homepage in Brazil, as well as YouTube there. It also took out a full-page advertisement in the local newspaper, Folha de Sao Paulo, to sway public opinion. Tell me if I said the name of that newspaper the right way.
Folha,
Finally,
Folha.
okay, for you. Justice Minister Flavio Dino ordered Google to change the link on its homepage on Tuesday, saying the company had 2 hours after notification or it would face fines of 1 million reais. Is that it? Reais? 1 million reais? What's the word for the currency? Or $198,000 per hour. What? Tell me more about that, Yoji.
Well, the internet companies they did a faux pas by doing this kind of ad, and that it's swing everybody into coalesce in favor because it was perceived as an interference of Google into the government and trying to use the populace as a bargain. So and it certainly backfire because they decided not to send the bill to vote, and things gonna be for now being done through the judicial system, which is much more I would say efficient, is immediate. For example, while the Minister of Justice was speaking, didn't even got the 2 hours. In minutes after he spoke, Google took down.
Hmm.
You know,
Quickly.
so yeah, and people here called they've been calling here as judicial activism
Hmm.
by the courts, that they're being very efficient and swift into dealing with those issues, thanks to the leadership of the minister called Alexandre de Moraes. You know, he it is very diligent and there is no nonsense for him. You know, he goes straight. So him, for example, yesterday, who determined the raid on Bolsonaro's house and and the imprisonment of Bolsonaro secretary. So and all the politicians, even those that were not, they were opposed now because of this interference of Google, they are in support of the bill
Hmm.
because the only people who were against in here, were those staunch allies of Bolsonaro. So, and the bill was the catalyst of the bill was the latest massacre here in the schools, where everything was kind of set up through Discord and things like that. So, and after that massacre, there's more like between 100 and 150 youth got um, caught by doing activities on the internet. They're deemed to be potentially uh, dangerous or
Hmm.
lethal. So, from last week here, there was a scare in the schools that something was about to happen.
Hmm.
So the in all the state government created commissions to monitor the situation in school. So people are very aware. The government is very aware of these dangers to the youth. As well the political fake news that in certain way too are provoking death. As was in the case during the pandemic.
Yoji, thank you for the update. Hang out with me for the rest of the program. I want to bring other guests in. I'm going to pivot a little bit. Let me bring in another editor, W.D. Foster Graham. W.D., good afternoon. Good to see you again, my friend. How are you?
Oh, hi, Al. It's great to be here one more time.
There we go. And let me say hi to Michelle Madison, too, who's with us all the time from out east. Michelle, thank you. And for all the people that you send our way, thank you so much for supporting the conversation with Al McFarlane. So, it was cool to talk about books, the idea that this is Get Caught Reading Month. And we have established with your leadership the capacity to bring authors on to talk about books at least once, perhaps twice a month on a regular basis, and today is no exception. So I'm going to ask you to introduce my friend, your friend, and a great author, a great human being, Sharon Botts Garth, and talk about, this whole thing that you and I have conversations about how do we elevate Black equity, Black ownership, Black genius, the Black story, and our production capacity so that we occupy the pace we should be in serving the interest of our people, but also in determining the world's understanding and awareness of us in our own voices. WD, what do you think?
Well, I think that in our own voices, I always go back to something and say that when we change the narrative, we change the perception. And so when it comes to books, it's important that, we have to speak out, and we speak out through our literary voices. And as African Americans, it is up to us to support our authors, because you think about it, back during that time of slavery, think about how dangerous it was for a slave to know how to read and write. Mm-hmm. And that gives me a whole respect for reading and for writing. And like you, Al, I'm a voracious reader. And having a platform where we support and elevate other Black authors, poets, and playwrights is putting us out there, and where we are sharing the stories versus another culture's perception of us. And that is crucial. Like being get caught reading, hey, that's something that we can do as adults to pass on to our children. The best way to do that is always by example, because when it comes to our children, they're going to be watching more what we do than what we say.
We'll introduce Sharon, if you would.
Yes, it is my pleasure to introduce Sister Sharon Botts Garth, who is the author of When Destiny Calls. And I had the honor of attending her book launch. And that was the catalyst for me to push for increased representation of Black authors and poets in the Minnesota Public Library system. Of course, her grandfather is a legacy, Reverend Henry Botts, as the pastor of Zion Baptist Church. She is inspiring. When I heard her speaking during her book launch, she had a way of not only embracing the history, but also to make it relevant to the present. So I appreciate you, my sister, Sharon Botts Garth.
Hey, Sharon, welcome.
Good afternoon. I am so thrilled to be here with both of you today. This is so exciting for me. You just don't know. I am just happy to be here to represent what has been a lifelong kind of accomplishment for me, and that is my book. To be able to share the story of my grandfather, who was one of those people who grew up. He was born in 1875. So that was just 10 years after slavery. And even though he was beginning to learn to read and write through his own vehicles, it was still very, very difficult, and it was not always accepted. And so they had to often hide and find ways to, by way of night, find ways to learn to read and write and have their candlelight vigils so that they could be able to accomplish the things that they hoped to do in the world. I wrote this book about my grandfather for several reasons. And the first one is that I was in a couple of different groups here in Minnesota, maybe about, it was probably about 5-6 years ago. And they kept asking, where are the books about African Americans that grew up or have lived in Minnesota? And there were so few that were coming up. I've just felt like, oh, I've got to tell this story because my grandfather came here to Minnesota in 1929. He was called to be the pastor of Zion Baptist Church. And he came after having a very lengthy pastoralship in Missouri, in Omaha, but was called here to Minnesota. He came with a lot of pride and promise. He really came because he wanted to make a difference for the Black community in Minnesota. And when he came with ideas, with zeal, with just emotions on how to help people move forward here. So, you would think in 29, here we've got the Jim Crow laws going on down south. We've got the Black Code. We've got all this going on. And you probably think coming to Minnesota, oh, that's not happening here. But in 2029, when he came, racism was just...
In 1929, yeah.
1929. It was just as well practiced here in Minnesota as it was in the southern states. Maybe not as openly, it was more overtly done, but it was still very much a segregated area. And so when he came with the idea that he could make a difference. And he, through his work at the church, he encouraged reading, getting your education. He taught people to be independent, to think on their own. He brought people like the NAACP and Urban League. Some of their first meetings were at the church to begin to open up and share how Black people could have more opportunities than they had in the past. He was really ahead of his time when it came to thinking outside the box and trying to figure out how to help move a group of people forward. Interestingly enough, he also became very politically inclined. So he really got to work with a lot of people in the Senate and in the House to start telling the Black story, start sharing the opportunities on how to help people, all people, including Black people, be job ready, be able to own homes. Owning homes was an interesting thing in Minnesota back in the 20s and 30s because a lot of the homes were those that had been abandoned by those whites who had moved on and were able to build better homes. And so many of the homes did not have running water. They did not have heat indoors. They had, I remember my own grandmother, her house, she actually had an ice box where the man had to come bring the ice.
Mine too. So Sharon, were you born here?
I was born here in the 40s.
Okay. And then let me ask, was Reverend Botts, did he pass when? When did he pass?
He passed in 1960.
Okay.
So he spent 30 years at Zion Baptist Church.
Okay. When did he leave Zion Baptist? And who followed him there?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
When did he leave Zion Baptist Church, and who followed him, if you remember?
He actually resigned from Zion Baptist Church in 1959, and then he actually passed in 60. So Reverend Holloway
Holloway, right?
was the pastor who came after my grandfather. Very, very different family also. And they did a wonderful job of carrying on the work and the legacy that my grandfather had started.
And then I think Reverend Heron followed Reverend Holloway.
Reverend Heron followed Reverend Holloway.
And Zion's pastor now is Reverend Heron's son.
Yes,
so there's a
right.
continuity there that means a lot, because it reflects how we grow and live and keep connected in our community. So let me ask you, and I want to have you keep mentioning the name of the book, When Destiny Calls, because I want people who are listening to go out and find a copy and buy the book. Buy the book.
Yes.
Purchase the book, because that's what it's about, is the exchange, the commerce, the value that we place on each other's contribution, our work, our genius, and how we monetize our relationships in ways that are ethical and that are beneficial and that bring value to ourselves and to the producers of content and to the generations that are yet to come. So I wanted you to talk about a two-track conversation, if you don't mind, Sharon. Talk about your earliest memories of your grandfather. What kind of person did he and your grandmother appear to be to you? How did they help shape your life? And as an individual watching them and being part of them, how do you explain their role in shaping the community? And you've talked about that already a little bit, but to be more specific, the role they played in building confidence and progress in the community at large. And if you want to weave that into talking about different stories you tell in the book, please do.
Okay, I certainly will. Yes. As I say, I was born in the 40s, and so I have a strong memory of my grandfather and my grandmother. Actually, I grew up in Zion Baptist Church, and some of my fondest memories are at Zion Baptist Church with the home of the pastor's home was right next door. So between the parsonage and the church, I spent a lot of time there. I was, at the time, I was my grandfather's only grandchild. And so I had the distinct opportunity to spend a lot of time with him. He and I thought I was his best friend, because he called me at least once or twice a week. He came to get me to bring me to Bible study or to church, something that was going on for the children. He was always very involved in programming for young people, for the children. And he made sure that me and others in the community, he picked up not only myself, but my friends and everybody else. We all always went to church with Granddad. And it was it was the way we learned to live. He was our example. Our grandmother would cook for us after the presentations, the events, all of the things that we practiced for. We were always getting ready for something, whether it was a Christmas play, an Easter play. Oftentimes we went out into the community and we did special things. We've cleaned up yards. We went to help at nursing homes. So he kept us active. He kept us engaged. He taught us how to care for others. And I think that once you learn how to care for others, then you can take good care of yourself, because you have the right focus of when you're helping others, you're really helping educate and preparing yourself. And so in his quiet way, he was a very quiet man. He didn't talk a lot. He was all about action. And not only was he active with the young people, but then he was helping older teens who were getting ready to go to, maybe leaving high school and getting ready to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he had so many things that he had them involved in. He had them handing out flyers for political candidates and learning what the world was about. He had them planning many of the trips that the church would go on. So they became the motor that made a lot of those things work. My grandfather was also the moderator for the state convention, which then, of course, dovetailed into the National Baptist Convention. And so there was a lot of organizing and planning that went along with those kind of events, whether they were being held here locally or within our 5-state region. And so those older teens and young adults really got to be involved in putting those programs and getting those guest speakers from around the country, and really trying to figure out what were the hot political buttons for our Black community, and where should we stand? Where should we be within those places?
What was this training? And maybe your book goes into this. How did he arrive at his mission and accept that mission? The book is called When Destiny Calls. Talk about that sense of destiny that you have described in your book.
Yes, the sense of destiny I felt came from my grandfather's stories that he told me about how he, as a young man, starting at 8-9 years old, he started standing on there was a platform where the people used to come and leave to sell their vegetables. And there was a little corner there that he carved out for himself where he could stand there and preach. So he would, as his family was selling their vegetables, he would be standing there entertaining, preaching to all of those that were coming to buy food. And he and his brother then began to put together full church services where they would sing and they would play and they would pray. And they got the attention of a couple of pastors in nearby larger cities. And so they started asking them to come once a week or once a month and help them in their church services. And so I think his destiny was shaped at an early age, and he just kept following. Anytime anyone who would ask him to come, even if he had to walk 10, 20 miles just to deliver a prayer, he would go. And so he was so determined to become a minister. By the time he was 18 or 19, he was able to enter college. He had prepared himself, learning to read and write.
Doing well in school.
And he got into college. So he received his degree in I believe it was between it was somewhere around, he was about 22. So I'm not adding that quick right now, but he was around 22. And so from that, he was just an avid reader. He got up every day, his whole life at 4:00, and he read until he had to start his chores and so on and so forth. So as I say, by the time he came to Minnesota, he was a seasoned pastor. He was probably in his 40s by the time he came here.
So where was he born? Where was he born?
He was born in a little town called Meadville, Missouri.
Where's that? Where's Meadville?
And that is about 60 miles from the border of Iowa.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so it's a very, very small town.
It's like near Des Moines or Ames, one of those. Do you know?
Nearest to Des Moines.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, he learned how to move. He kind of followed the need. So whenever someone needed something, he went. His church before coming to Zion Baptist Church in Minneapolis was Zion Baptist Church in Omaha. And so he saw Zion as a sign, and his brother also had a church in Lincoln, Nebraska, called Zion Baptist Church. And so, and went to California to another Zion Baptist Church. So they felt that those were the places that God would have them to go. And that's how my father moved from Omaha to Minneapolis, is because he was called to a church called Zion in Minneapolis, and he felt that that was something he had to do because that was a path God had for him.
WD, jump in this conversation. I see you smiling on the side there, and again, kudos to you. Thank you for curating these special interviews. Impressions, thoughts. What are we learning as we have a chance to engage with authors? Not only, what are we learning in terms of content that they produce, but what are we learning about the process and about the relationships and the value of us telling our story to ourselves and to the world, the importance of documentation? What do you think?
Well, I guess as we of African descent, we came from an oral tradition. But now here in the 21st century, we have to make sure that while our elders are here to get their stories, get that information while they have it. Because if we don't, a lot of the information is lost. Like when I was reading When Destiny Calls, I was very impressed because growing up, this story wouldn't have been taught in Minneapolis public schools. And these are the kind of things that are part of our legacy, not only to to hear it, but also to pass it on and to carry it forward, because those lessons from our ancestors can also be, and often are, relevant to today. And again, when I read Sharon's story about Henry Botts, you're reminded how the pivotal role that churches play in our history. That's where that was our rallying point. The churches, when it came to Black communities, even communities as tiny as the Twin Cities was back in the day.
I don't know if Yoji's still around or not. Yoji, if you're here, come back in the conversation just to broaden this conversation, if you're here. And the element I'd like for us to talk about is, again, documentation and history. Whose responsibility is it to create a narrative, to show who we are and where we have been, and therefore to author, to write, to craft a future? And Yoji, I see you there. What is the experience in that part of the hemisphere in the South of Black people, of African people, Afrodescendants, taking charge and capturing and preserving and protecting, projecting history, legacy, creating identity? What is your sense? What is your thought?
Well, I was just thinking, listening to this, the lady
Sister Sharon.
telling the story, Mr. Sharon, sorry, about her grandfather. In certain way, I feel related because I did also have a strong relationship with my grandfather, and he also was born in the 19th century, and we had the the luck of being able to meet somebody that bring forward those histories to us. So here I was thinking exactly, it was about how describing the role the church has for Black Americans. And I was in my mind comparing exactly at that moment um, about our history here. So here, Black people historically um, embrace Christianity, but not full-hearted as African Americans did in the United States. Here we embrace Christianity in the sense one was Catholic Christianity, Catholic, and as a way of preserve our own tradition and culture. So people of Candomblé would pretend they are uh, uh, worshiping the Catholic saints. As in certain way, the Portuguese who arrived here very early were Jewish people that were hiding into Christianity and Catholicism. So here, Black people created, still on the time during the slavery, it was so, so, Society of Protectors of the Invalids, right? There was kind of mutuals that we put together money to liberate those that were still in captivity, also to take care of those who got old and didn't have assistance, and to bury those who were indigent. So last week there was, I can remember it's 150 years of commemorating of the society. But here too, and now it's just emerging those stories because also we are just now also being have access to tell our stories that is in comparing to the African Americans, you have these chances prior to us, but here there is a strong literary tradition of Black people, because as I say, I remark all the time, because of the sheer proportion that we are in the population, we are majority.
Sharon, let me ask you to respond to that just quickly, because I think that what Yoji is describing really is an accurate description of the Black church in this country as well, because I think that Yoji, the wisdom and power of Black people who studied religion is that they studied with a sincerity and authenticity, and they found ways to both incorporate and transcend to discover the quintessential truth in a religious idea, a truth that really superseded the imperfection of the colonizer. The colonizer was a liar, right? Who used the tool of religion to enslave us. Our people demonstrated the genius to absorb their malintent and to transform both ourselves and the time and the world around the principle that they were playing with. We're about out of time. Sharing 30 seconds. Just
yes, I would like to say that you can get my book through Amazon.com, and it is under the title When Destiny Calls, and my name, Sharon Botts Garth. And actually, it's about an ordinary individual who dared to trust and follow his destiny. And I think that's a story that we should tell for our young people so that they have a future.
We got to go. Listen, Sharon Botts Garth, W. Foster Graham, Maestri Yoji Senna, thank you all so much for being here. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks.
Ciao.